Welcome back, everyone, to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey. We're back after a 1 week break. I mean, it's middle of the season. It's kind of just what it is right now, right? There's a lot of, everyone knows who's good, who's bad, all that. The waiver wire's been kind of, there's some guys lately, but there's nothing crazy. Even this week, waivers will be already processed by the time you probably hear this, but nothing that crazy out there. Top waiver wire ad's probably like Keaton Mitchell, but he's like in a 3-headed committee, so it's not that interesting. So what we're going to do is actually just go quick little recap of the season and give away some fantasy awards. We're through 9 weeks, just over halfway. So we wanted to throw out who is the MVP, who's the biggest disappointment, and then who's the biggest waiver wire pickup of the year. So let's jump into it right away. Who's the fantasy MVP so far, Jeff? So we're through 9 weeks.
Currently, fantasy MVP, I have to give it to McCaffrey. Not going to be world shattering. Everyone understands why, but the guy has been, not only has he been very good, but he's been very healthy. And that is always the knock against him. He is averaging 21 points per game. That is more than any other position. So if you got him, running back has been a little tough, a lot of injury ridden people and whatnot.
Yeah.
So if you had him, he's great. I could make an argument for a few other people, and I could make even more arguments if you're going for the value they went for, because McCaffrey went for a lot. But even right now, he's well worth the money. So I have to give it to McCaffrey halfway through the year.
So I did the same. It's McCaffrey for me. You're right. There's a couple names you could have thrown out there if you want to go the value route. Like ETN's done great for where he went. Mostert, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But it's McCaffrey. He's been far and away the best. He scores a touchdown every single game. Injuries just kind of made us concerned, and now you look back at that and if you were talking like there's a snake draft, we would have picked him number 1, no problem, and never thought twice about it. Mm-hmm. But auction, we hesitated probably a little bit on spending everything for McCaffrey where he could get hurt. He's the only one that's worked out, though, really, out of the top guys. That's truly worked out that you would have spent big on. That's it.
Oh, running back for sure.
Yeah, running back. Even wide receiver-wise, there's not many other than Tyreek.
I was going to say, Tyreek would be the other one that would be in the discussion for that, but you're absolutely right.
None of the really big-time guys have panned out exactly like you wanted to at all. I mean, really, Eckler was hurt. I'm trying to think of these big names. Eckler was hurt. Derrick Henry's been fine, but if you paid big money, you're not getting that.
And people will say, well, he's number 5 overall, in the running back position.
Fine,
but at the same time, if you look at the numbers themselves, right? Like if you're 5th, that's very, very good. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, you're averaging 13 point something points per game compared to the 21.
It's such a difference.
It is a huge difference. I mean, every week, McCaffrey gives you a huge leg up. And I think that is really the difference. And the fact that he was able to stay healthy. There's plenty of guys that have been very good that have had a couple of games injured. And that, as when we're talking about this kind of stuff, it does hurt them because we're only talking about, 8-9 games. So,
yep. Yeah, it's just far and away the best this year by far. All right. But who's been the biggest disappointment for you?
I have a few different guys.
Yeah. And there's a couple options here.
Yeah. And I'm going to go with the one that I feel like hurt people the most currently. And then I want to talk about a few others, but I think number 1, and I have him, and so maybe this is near and dear to my heart, but I actually think, even though I think he'll turn it around, I think Pollard has actually been he's been healthy. He has a prime situation. He should be very, very good. And right now, I believe, he's running back 23.
In standard,
it just cannot happen. It can't happen. There is no reason for it whatsoever. And that's what blows my mind. There's other guys, you get hurt, you do this, whatever. But he's been healthy. And that one kills me to an extent too, because you pay for consistency. And even if he was in the top 10, even if it was in the back end, you're kind of like, okay, well, he worked out. He's fine. 23 means he's underachieving like crazy. I mean, for the most part. I do think he can turn it around. I don't think he's a lost cause. It might be a buy low kind of situation here. But right now,
especially coming up, he's buy low. The schedule: Giants, Carolina, Washington. That's nice.
He could get himself all the way into the top 10 again very quickly in the next 3 games. But right now, I have to say Pollard. How about you?
Pollard.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he was my pick as well. He was hyped as, and we thought he was going to be great too. Like hyped as this guy's going to be a sure thing up there. Now Zeke's gone. It's going to be easy. He's going to be great. Doesn't pan out. I'm pulling up the numbers here. He started the year though, week 1. This is where it gets even more disappointing. Week 1, good. 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. You're as Pollard owner, like, this is great.
I thought he was guaranteed.
Week 2, yardage wasn't great necessarily. It was okay, but he had 25 carries. So you're like, all the work's there. And he had 7 catches. So like after 2 weeks, you're like, all right, awesome. He's going to be great. Week 3, 23 carries for 122. And you're probably like, okay, got a running back 1. This guy, this is a sure thing. No worries whatsoever. So think about that. He does those 3 weeks and he's still running back 23.
Yeah.
Because ever since then, his best game, no touchdown since week 1. That's crazy, actually, when you think about it. No touchdown since week 1. What's going on there?
Yeah.
And then his biggest yardage since then is 53. But even the carries, 11, 8, 15, 12, and 12. He's not getting the carries. He did have the nice, he had a 6-catch, 80-yard game. But, man, what's going on there?
Yeah, and the worst part is when you look at it, you're kind of like, I mean, they're not the worst numbers in the world. You're getting double-digit carries. You're doing this, but
you were paying though for him.
Well, that was the thing. You paid for him, and you thought he was going to be better. I mean, you thought, and right now, I mean, you're talking about 2 touchdowns on the season. Yeah, I mean, that is rushing.
That's 2 touchdowns in the game 1. He hasn't done a thing since.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big one. So, I mean, it was kind of, honestly, and I do wonder for like someone like A.J. Brown, he was doing much better in yardage, but I wonder if he hadn't gotten hot recently. And I had A.J. Brown on my team, 2 of my teams as well. I wonder if people would be talking about him the same way, because you're kind of like, even though you're producing for the most part, and AJ was producing at a much higher rate. Don't get me wrong. I shouldn't compare those two. But at the same time, you're looking at Pollard's numbers and you're like, they're not that bad. Why? And then you look at touchdowns and you're like, oh, Dallas in general is underachieving.
Yeah.
But to be fair, Lamb turned it around recently and skyrocketed up the ranks as far as wide receiver. You do wonder if now Pollard is about to hit these run-friendly teams, if it's going to change as well.
Yep. And only 5 rushing touchdowns for the Cowboys all year. Yeah. That's it. And yeah, Pollard had those 2 week 1. Dax had 1. The Turpins had 1. So and then Hunter Lupke. I've never heard of this guy. He had 3 carries, 1 of them for a touchdown. So it's I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah. So we both had Pollard. Who are the other ones in your possibilities?
Without injury, it's hard. I guess if it wasn't as big to me, but I'll just throw some names. Like, I mean, people really thought Josh Jacobs was going to be awesome, and he's just not. He's okay.
I mean, he's doing.
He's okay. He's getting a little better. Madison. Some people were into thinking Madison is going to take over for Dalvin Cook and be the thing. We were never on Madison, but
I will say this: I did give him some hype as far as I thought he was undervalued for auction.
Yep.
And he's been, you're right. He never fully took over, and even more so. I mean, they even went out and they got another running back, and he didn't lose his position to him, but his numbers didn't improve all that much.
Najee isn't a disappointment to us.
Okay, that's a good point. I was going to say we never.
No, he's not to us, but he could be to others who, for some reason, Damian Pierce is probably a disappointment to people, not to us. So I feel pretty good about those picks. We were not on those guys at all.
No.
We just had no, and it's showing. But for me, Miles Sanders, I think he's been more injured than let on, because he was hurt before the season started, and okay, whatever. He'll be fine. He'll be healthy. But I guess this team is just way worse than we even anticipated. And Bryce Young is just not doing well at all. You look at CJ Stroud and look at Bryce Young, like, man, Carolina has to be kicking themselves right now for picking Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. Yeah, and so because of that, Miles Sanders, he's been hurt. Nothing's getting going. And honestly, Hubbard's looked better than him. I mean, I think he has. I don't know if that's injury. I don't know what that is, but hey, he's looked better. So he's been a major disappointment for me. That I would say definitely. That might not be as many for other people, but yeah, for me, it's like, man, this guy's terrible. But some others, wide receivers like Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, actually, he's a good one. I didn't have him on my list, but I mean, he's 26th right now, and
he was getting drafted right after the top 10.
Yeah, and he's only missed 1 game so far. I mean, they're just about to hit their bye, so that one. I mean, he's had really 2 games in double digits as far as standard goes, but I will say in the past was that 5 games he has 3 touchdowns. He is starting to come around a bit, but still.
There's a few receivers. Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams is definitely on my list. He started off good. I mean, he started off very well. And you made it through week 3 when he had that huge one, right? It was kind of like the first week you have 6 for 9. Yeah, that's fine. And then 6 for 8 with a touchdown. Cool. And then they targeted him 20 times, 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you're kind of like, okay, he'll be fine the rest of the year. Like, I don't, I'm not expecting him to be number 1, but he'd be in the top 5. And he completely fell off. And the worst part is the Raiders have a terrible time, like, regrouping, pulling it together. Devontae Adams, if anyone can do it, he can come back. But I have him on a team, and I thought he was gonna be a sure thing as far as like solid contributor. And I'm really starting to lose faith. And he's about to hit, playing the Jets as well this week. You're about to go against a very good cornerback. I don't know if I just don't know if he can pull it together. Right. I honestly don't.
Chris Olave. He's another one.
Another one that I loved. He hasn't gotten it going at all. That offense is not nearly as good as I thought they were going to be. I won't put everyone, but I honestly only 2 touchdowns. He just caught one in last week. That is the thing that surprises me the most. They try to go to him, it just hasn't worked out. And once again, I think he is, because he wasn't drafted quite as high as say a Devontae or something. I do think he's another one that might be a good buy low candidate, because I do think he could pull it together at the end. He had a very good campaign last year, so we know what he's capable of. But I 100% he was on my list as well.
Calvin Ridley's been,
I didn't put it. I mean, he has been, but
that first game looked great, and I mean that kind of hyped him more, and just hasn't happened since.
He had a quick hype, and I didn't go too hard on it, but
and then some other just T. Higgins, he was up there he was in that Waddle level, and he played really well though this past week, so hopefully that's gonna turn around.
Well, so because of that, honestly, Burrow.
I think Burrow is a big key to that. I think that whole offense is really good.
I mean, he was quarterback?
He was disappointed, but he's
quarterback 17.
The last 2 weeks though, he's been awesome. So it hurt you for a while though. That's the problem. If he was your quarterback, it hurt you.
Well, if you got paid for him, because you're probably paying for him as like the 5th, 4th quarterback, depending on what in the draft. And look, I mean, if up to this point you only got 2 good games out of him,
you could be hurting. Hopefully you made it through. If you did, you're in good shape now. But then, I mean, there's some other lesser names that no one was like completely hyped. Some people were hyping, like Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson. They just haven't done anything. They're not, just not good. Another one that's actually, I'll go to quarterback, who was getting a little bit of hype, and Trevor Lawrence. He was a top 10 quarterback in a lot of drafts, and he is QB 18.
Yeah, he's being rough.
He's actually behind Burrow.
Yeah,
and Burrow was hurt, so that's been rough. If you used if people bought into like Geno Smith and like that 12-13 quarterback, like if you really waited and like I'll get Geno Smith, he's not doing it either. But there's definitely some disappointments this year. That's for sure.
Without a doubt. And the one other name, and not to the extent, but with the hype and everything going on, I think Bijan. He was on my short list, but he wasn't actually in the category of like a Adams, Burrow, Pollard. But at the same time, I don't know if they're going to pull out of it. A lot of it is not his fault.
That's the part that gets in. It's almost more annoying. It
is annoying because we watched in the first couple of games. He's been healthy. He is a stud. There's no doubt about it. And they just don't use him in a way that is conducive to fantasy, and I mean whatever to them. But at the same time, you're like, man.
He has 103 carries for 517 yards, 5 yards per carry. But they don't use him on the goal line ever. Like, you just lost to Minnesota with Josh Dobbs, and you lost to Tennessee with Will Levis. Like, come on.
And also, I never thought my one knock against them was going to be like, I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team. Like, I wonder if they're going to be out of it. They were in it, and they're losing to these bad teams.
Let's try your best player down there. See what happens.
That's the wild thing. And he started off so promising.
He showed it. And then even the catches, like you look, he was getting receptions 6, 4, 4, 5 the first 4 weeks. and then even 2 and 5. And then the last 3 weeks, he has 2 combined catches. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, I get trying to prolong a career of a very special player, but at the same time, like, you already know that running backs are, a shorter lifespan
Honestly,
anyway. And you gave him 19 carries in week 2, and he got 124 yards. Like, you gave him 14 in week 4, and he got 105. Why in the world would you not try to give him 20 carries?
Well, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I get, you want to save your stars a little bit like that, but I mean, you're in a bad division, and you can get to the playoffs now. I don't know. It's weird. All right, but enough disappointments. One last one. Best waiver wire pickup of the year.
Yeah, I have a couple of different names, but I will go for, and once again, depending on where you're at, who you actually get off waivers, but this is in general a come out of nowhere. Maybe you draft him at the very end, but my number one would be Zach Moss.
What is he? I don't even know what he's at anymore.
He's the 4th best running back.
Yep.
Which is hilarious.
He's going to fall a little bit now.
Without a doubt. I mean, he's going to be taken over, but
still,
at midpoint in the season, I want to give him his flowers, because Zach Moss came out and he came from a spot where everyone thought he was done. He was, he wasn't ever a highly touted player anyway. And he comes out in Indianapolis and they give him a ton of attempts and he made the most of them. And, good for him. Number 4 overall. He's going to start losing carries to a better back, but at the same time, awesome. Great.
Yep. There's so a couple other, so my main name will be Puka.
Yeah, he was on my short list.
Top 10 wide receiver. The quarterback situation now hurt. Like both these guys, like it's kind of like the quarterback situation now for the Rams. If Stafford's not the guy, if it's ripping, like then, man, that's not going to be good.
Yeah.
They just signed Carson Wentz, so hopefully I can just throw Carson Wentz in there right now. I think he'll be better than what they have. So a little worried going on, but he's been awesome for the year. Just awesome. The one that would have been probably, if he didn't get hurt, was Devin Achane.
Yeah, okay. That was the one I put on here too. And even though he was hurt, he was still number 3 on my list, because
it's insane.
He literally played, 4 games? Yeah. 3 games? Pretty much 3 games. And I was like, he's number 3 on it.
This is standard scoring. He's 23 points per game. He's ahead of McCaffrey by 2 full points.
Yeah. How many players can you say, if you draft or grab him off waivers and he legitimately wins you 3 weeks, you're like, that's well worth it.
38 carries, 460 yards.
It's insane.
Man, let's see what happens when he comes back from that injury. But that was an insane stretch. And the crazy thing is he can be considered a waiver wire pickup. He was drafted, I think, in a lot of spots, but he was dropped in so many spots. After the first 2 games, he had 1 carry for 5 yards. He was dropped all over the place and then just went nuts. Just absolutely insane. I don't know if that could, I'm really curious how that would have kept going.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you mean by insane? Do you mean 4 touchdowns in week 3?
Yeah. And then one other, Kyron Williams was the same way. He was on that pace until he got hurt.
Yeah.
He was doing really well. He's still up there. His average is pretty good. So, yeah, there's actually been in Sam Laporta. No, I'll go Sam Laporta.
Laporta, I mean, compared to these guys that went absolutely nuts, but Laporta is a great one, yeah.
Yep, and then even in quarterback, you go C.J. Stroud, the way he played this last week. So,
yeah.
But there we go. There's some mid-season awards. We got a few more weeks left. We're only, 10, 11, 12. We got 5 weeks really left, and then go to the playoffs. So. We're getting there. I
do want to give myself a few flowers as well. I'm crossing my fingers hoping that I'm correct. Do you remember who you picked to begin the year when we said MVP and all that?
Probably nobody good.
My MVP, because I was kind of like,
is
Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. It actually.
And I said that because I was like, I won't say caveat, but with the
where you got
information of the value of him. And I tell you, after the 3-game suspension, he's come back and he has been very good. He's running back 18 with missing 3 games.
It's not bad.
He's been very, very good, and he could be your running back number 3 right now.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how it finishes out. I think a lot of these guys, like we talked about, Pollard could turn it around. Olave could turn it around. Bijan, depending on, if that coach gets fired.
He has a Bijan. So I let me pull this up. I know he has I believe he has a pretty decent schedule where I think, and honestly, some of this 2 losses, Arthur Smith's getting hammered for this. could you see a spot where all of a sudden they use him a little more? We'll see. They play Arizona this in week 10 here. That could be a good matchup. They go to bye. Then New Orleans, I'm not worried about that. Jets are a little tougher, but Tampa, Carolina, Indianapolis, Chicago, that's the final stretch there. So we'll see. Week 14 through 17, that playoff, like the final regular season, the playoff run could be pretty interesting for Bijan. So we'll see what happens. But all right, that will do it for today. Talk to you guys next time.